love your neighbor as yourself. Love is the key to everything that we do. Love is what we need. And so I'm coming out First Corinthians 13 and 3. And so let's talk about God's kind of love. You know, I told you, I mean, we say that we love people, but God has the kind of love that is something else. So it goes on to describe it. It says, and I'm reading out of the Message Bible, guys. Love never gives up. Love cares more for others than for self. Love doesn't want what it doesn't have. Love doesn't strut, doesn't have a swelled head, doesn't force itself on others, isn't always me first, doesn't fly off the handle, doesn't keep score of the sins of others, doesn't reveal when others grovel, takes pleasure in the flowering of truth, puts up with anything, trusts God always looks for the best, never looks back, but keeps going to the end. Now that's one translation of it. Said love never dies. Love never dies. You guys, that's verse 8. The beginning of verse 8 in the Message Bible says love never dies. And that's the kind of love I want to have. I want to be kind. I want the kind of love that suffers long and is kind, that does not envy, that does not boast, that does not behave rudely, does not seek its own, is not provoked, thinks no evil, does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in truth. Love bears all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. Love. You can't say that you love me if you can't show me those things. And I can't say that I love you without the evidence of those things being present. And so my thing is, let's ask God for a little more love in this world. You know, let's ask God for a little bit more, for just a little bit more love. You know? And so, you know, we had a little old school session last week, and it went over well. I'm going to play some Lee Williams, Love Will Go All the Way. I just want y'all to just know we're going to focus today on love. Is that all right with y'all? Because I need this love. I need the love of God. I need it. Right here on WGFS, this is Lee Williams and the Spiritual QC's Love Will Go All the Way.
I love you and depend on Jesus. I love you and trust in the Lord. See, I found out He will. I love Thee. Can I say it again? I love and depend on Jesus. All I need is one witness, somebody here that's trusted. You see, I found out He will provide, 'cause I love to believe. I got another thing singing, oh, what I needed on Jesus. Singing, oh, what I learned to leave. Yes, I love and depend on it. I wish I had somebody somebody here that's trusting. You see, I found out He will provide. 'Cause I learned to lean on Jesus. I got one more thing. Second on my feet to walk in. I'm leaning on Jesus. Second on my right. We roll. I learned to lean on Jesus. Yes, I learned to lean. And depend on Jesus. Can I get somebody here that's trusting? You see, I found out, found out, found out, found out all the time when I was down and I couldn't get up, and all I had to do, y'all, was trust in Jesus. That's all I had to do, y'all, was trust in Jesus. Can I tell you another thing? And I'm talking about me. You see, I remember 2 years ago, my body got fever, and then I got sick, and then I went running all over town. Every doctor I went to, all the doctors let me down. But when I came back to church, and then I got down on my knees, and then I called on Jesus, and I called on Jesus, and then Jesus stopped by and laid his hands on me. The man healed my body, and he whispered in my ear. He said, listen, my child, to now why you were running, and from here and there, and all you had to do was just go down on your knees in prayer. Don't you know if I healed yesterday, today I'm still the same. When trouble comes in your life, call on the name, 'cause I found out He will provide. 'Cause I learned how to lean on Jesus. I learned how to lean on Jesus. I learned how to lean on Jesus. I need one witness. I need one witness. Somebody that'll show up.
All right, leaning. That was actually Lee Williams and the Spiritual QCs. I've learned to lean. There's nothing wrong with leaning on Jesus. In fact, that's what we need to do. That's from the Love Will Go All the Way album. I'm telling y'all, when you learn to trust God, it makes loving people a little bit easier. And today we are talking about one of the elements of the fruit of the Spirit, which is love. And God's definition of love and how He wants us to love each other. But oftentimes, the situation, circumstances, our humanity, our emotions, the things in our life makes it difficult, because loving someone the way that God says love, where you're bearing all things. One translation said love bears all things. The other translation, the Message translation, says puts up with anything. So that one single element of operating in love the way that God would have us to love makes you vulnerable. Are you willing to be vulnerable for people who won't appreciate or value who you are? Are you willing to be vulnerable in unsafe places? Because that's what it takes to love the way that God wants you to love. And just like Lee Williams and the Spiritual QCs were just talking, I've learned to lean on God. I've learned to trust Him. You have to trust God. It talks about, I think it's 1 Colossians 20:17. It says, be still. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. It's hard to stand still and be saved by God when you have that fight or flight in your spirit. I can fight this out myself. They coming a little too close, I'm going to fight. Or they've hurt me, I'm going to lash back at them. So that vulnerability that you need to operate in God's type of love, it really takes you trusting God. It really takes you believing in God and the promises of God, and looking at people, um, not at what people do, but remembering who they are, not who they've chosen to be. Because oftentimes when we act out of the character of the Spirit, when we do things contrary to what the fruit of the Spirit has spoken to us as elements of the Spirit, we have chosen to be or to do something other than be someone other than who God created us to be. And as you are raised up in God and as you mature, one of the things I feel like as a part of knowing God and growing with God is that you get to the point where you're able to see someone as God created them and not as who they've chosen to be. And, you know, situations and circumstances, that we self-inflicted. First of all, let me make that real plain. We often engage in behavior or connect with people that create situations and circumstances in our lives that causes us to abandon and default on our destiny. But love has the power to heal this world. Love, just operating in love. And that's why the enemy makes it so difficult for you to love people. They start, the enemy starts attacking your mind, and giving you thoughts of needing to protect yourself or not be made a fool of, or all of those crazy things that if we truly trust God and lean on him and believe what he says in his word, that he vengeance is his, that God will fight for us. Every tongue that rises up against us, no weapon formed against us shall prosper. If you believe that, then why are you dropping everything and trying to fight a battle for a defeated foe? The enemy has been defeated, right? So, with this love thing, y'all, it's difficult. Let's go through it. It's like love suffers long and is kind. That's one translation. And it says, love never gives up. Love cares more for others than for self. I can tell you, I have two sons. One is 26, and the other one will soon turn 17 in a couple of weeks. And my oldest son is very creative. He's very stubborn and headstrong, and has to live life on his terms. And the crazy thing is we go at it as mom and sons do, but he's a lot more like me than I would care to admit. He has things set in his mind, and he's really just he's done a lot of things and had to do it his way, had to learn lessons the hard way. I've recently understood that when I'm afraid, when I operate in fear, my fear comes out as frustration and it comes out as anger. It's like getting angry with a child who gets lost. That fear that you had of them being lost or hurt translates into anger. Like, why would you do that? Don't you ever do that again. It's just fear. You're just acting out of fear. And so I want so badly for his life to be good and for the life of his daughters. He have three beautiful girls that are my grand divas. And I want so desperately for his life to be good and for their lives to be great, that when I see him operating in something that I feel is detrimental to his life or to his destiny or contrary to his destiny, I get afraid and I get angry. And love would be the thing that will break the barriers, and to not forget who God told me he was. Showed me the greatness of my oldest son long before he was born. When he was still in my womb, I knew him to be great. And I named him Julian Sebastian, which is a wonderful name, which is a powerful and majestic name. And so it's difficult to be vulnerable with people who have the power to disappoint you, to hurt you, to um, to deceive you. It's difficult when it matters. Like, it doesn't always matter to you. It doesn't always matter um, to you that when somebody, like a person on the street, can cuss you out and it doesn't matter. You're like, whatever, and you don't think about it again. But say it's someone close to your loved one and they cuss you out, or they And the thing about it, when I thought about the love and the forgiveness, his compassion and unconditional love, the Holy Spirit told me this. And I wrote it down, you guys. It said, if you want someone to know God, then show them love. And I know it's so many of the holy rollers out there thumping the Bibles, measuring the hymnlines, looking at tattoos and piercings and turning their nose up at all of these young people out here in the world and old people, any people that's odd or different from who they think you ought to be. But salvation for this nation, for these unchurched individuals, for the millions of unchurched people right here in the United States. Salvation is not going to come until we exemplify the love of God in our everyday life, until we remove the stipulations that says that you have to look like us, you have to talk like us, and you have to think like us. You have to believe like us in order for us to love, in order for us to show you love. Because remember what I said before, Jesus loved me even when I did not consider him, even when I wasn't thinking about him, even when I was out there in the world doing everything that I wanted to do. And I can tell you today, I ain't in the world, but there's some days I still do what I want to do. I don't think about God and what God has ordained for my life or what he wants me to do. But he still loves me. He still considers me. Jesus is love. His very essence is love. All of the things that we talked about earlier, that's who Jesus is. And although we have this humanity, we're wrapped in this flesh, and we're living this natural life as spiritual beings, that spirit, that Holy Spirit within us, the fruit of the Spirit that can encourage us and nudge us on and give us confidence that we are operating the way that God would have us to operate, is there for us all the time. We have to decide whether or not we want to operate in the spirit, whether we want to move. And operating in the spirit don't mean that you're speaking in tongues and you laying hands and you're falling out. Just live the life that God has ordained you to live. Smile, encourage someone, pat them on the back. Do the things that's inside of you that comes natural. See, it's natural to smile, but it takes some thought to frown. I've seen my grandbabies do something and I just automatically smile, or I think about something that happened and I automatically smile. Or you look at something that's cute or funny and you smile. But to frown and to be angry, it takes contemplation. It takes premeditation. It's not a natural response. And it's always to prove a point or send a message to try to change someone or deter someone from doing what you think they shouldn't do by withholding that approval or that love. And the Lord is moving us to a new place, you guys. a component of your destiny, of the things that we need for this world. Love is a powerful tool that God has placed in our hands to defeat the very things that try to destroy us. But we think that if we give into love, if we give into that vulnerability, that we set ourselves into a worse state. But God says, when you're weak, I'm strong. So when you become vulnerable, when you allow yourself to love anyhow, regardless of those who despitefully use you, or you allow yourself to love anyway, even when you're hurting, even when you're confused, even when you don't know which way to turn or who to trust. If you don't know who to trust in your life, then trust God. I guarantee you, He's going to be all right. It's going to work out all right if you trust Him. But I'm going to tell y'all, I've been talking a lot, and I'm good with this. I love to talk about God. But you know what? The Commodores has a great song called Jesus is Love. We're going to let the Commodores go ahead and minister to us a little bit. When we come back, we'll keep on talking about God and His love.
Your children, and don't let them fall by the side of the road, and teach them to love one another, that heaven might find